Hello, and welcome to another session in our teaching series, Hidden Facts in Biology. We are still treating the transport system. And under that, we are looking at transport in man. Today, we'll be looking at the heart and the blood vessels. The human heart is a conical, hollow, muscular organ which works continuously throughout the life of a person. It is about the size of a clenched fist. That is, when you clench your fist, that tells you approximately about the size of the heart. Where is the heart located? The heart lies in the chest, just behind the breastbone and between the two lungs. The heart has four chambers: two upper thin wall atria or auricle and two lower thick walled ventricle. So this tells us that the atria are above while the ventricle are below. There is a thick interventricular septum that divides the heart longitudinally into two sides, that is the right and the left side. The right atrium or auricle has a communication with the right ventricle, and this communication is guarded by an opening known as the tricuspid valve. This valve prevents wrong flow of blood, and it does this by ensuring that blood flows only in one direction. On the left portion of the heart, the bicuspid, which is also known as the mitral valve, plays a similar role as the tricuspid valve does on the right. That is, on the left portion of the heart, the bicuspid valve will allow for blood to flow in one direction, thus preventing the wrong flow of blood on that side. The bicuspid valve has two cups. That is why it is called the bicuspid valve. Bi means two. While the tricuspid valve has three cups. That is why it's known as what? Tri. Tri means three. These cups are attached to the ventricular wall below by the condyles tendineae. The condyles tendineae are string-like and they prevent the cause from upward projection into the atrium during the process of ventricular contraction. That is when the ventricles are contracting. It is important for you to know that there is no communication between the right and left sides of the heart. Therefore, the heart functions as a double pump. The oxygenated blood enters the heart through a major vein, and this vein is called the vena cava into the right atrium. Upon entering into the right atrium, it passes through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. Remember, the tricuspid valve is the communication between the right atrium and the right ventricle. And from there, it is pumped to the lungs by the right side of the heart in the pulmonary circulation for oxygenation. While the left side pumps oxygenated blood through the aorta to all parts of the body in the systemic circulation. The type of muscles that the heart is made up of is the cardiac muscles, and the cardiac muscles are involuntary muscles, but however they have striations. Therefore, the only involuntary muscles that have striations are the cardiac muscles. These muscles are not attached to bone or any hard structures. In the structure of the heart, you will see that the ventricles are actually thicker and firmer than the auricles. Remember, I will say the ventricles are located in the lower part, while the auricles are located in the upper part. And this is because it is the ventricles that pump blood to greater distances. The heart is actually an involuntary organ. In other words, we mean that its function is not under the control of the will. This means that we cannot control how our heart beats. Our heart beats on its own. The beat of the mammalian heart is initiated by the sinoatrial node, which is also known as the pacemaker of the heart. This sinoatrial node generates what is known as nerve impulses, and this nerve impulse spread to the atrioventricular node or the AV node. Mind you, the sinoatrial node is also known as the what? SA node. Now, from the atrioventricular node or AV node, the impulses are amplified and are spread to other regions of the heart, by the Purkinje fibers. The rate of heartbeat is actually controlled by the nervous system, and it is the medulla oblongata that is responsible for this. The sinoatrial node, or we can also call it the sino-auricular node, receive fibers, that is nerve fibers, from the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is a parasympathetic nerve. When we say parasympathetic, we mean that it controls the actions of what? Rest and digestion. And the sympathetic nerve of the autonomic nervous system also supplies fibers to the sinoatrial node. That is, the sinoatrial node receives fiber from both parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous supply. Now, what does the vagus nerve do? The vagus of the parasympathetic nerve slows the rate of heartbeat, while the sympathetic fibers accelerate it. Always remember this fact that parasympathetic stimulation are for rest and digestion, while sympathetic stimulation are for fight and flight activities. So now the process of heartbeat, we'll look at that now. Heartbeat occurs in two stages, and these two stages are known as the diastole and the systole. The diastole stage is the first stage, and this involves the contraction of the auricles, while the systole stage is the second stage, and it involves the contraction of the ventricles. The rate of heartbeat in an adult human being is about 72 times per minute. So this is just a brief discussion on the basic structure of the heart. So now I will show you a diagram of the mammalian heart, and with that diagram I will explain some few things to you. So now this is the structure of the mammalian heart. So we'll be looking at the diagram and we'll describe the functions of these labeled parts. But remember that if you are asked to draw this in an exam situation, you should use a sharp pencil. You should make sure that there is no shading, and also your lines should not cross when you are labeling. So now let's look at the different label parts. So now you can see the left and right pulmonary arteries. The function of these pulmonary arteries is that they carry the oxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs. And the next structure there, which we'll be talking about, is the superior vena cava. The superior vena cava receives the oxygenated blood from the upper body and it sends it to the right atrium. So that is the function of the superior vena cava. So now, after looking at the superior vena cava, let's talk about the inferior vena cava, which is located at this point here. The function of the inferior vena cava is that it receives blood from the lower body and sends it to the right atrium. So the superior vena cava receives blood from the upper part of the body, while the inferior vena cava receives blood from the lower body, and both sends it where? To the right atrium. So now let's talk about the right atrium. The right atrium, which is labeled there. The right atrium receives the oxygenated blood from both the superior and inferior vena cava, as we have mentioned earlier, and stores it until there is enough blood pressure to force the tricuspid valve open to fill the ventricle. Remember, we said that the tricuspid valve is what separates the right atrium from the right ventricle. Although not labeled, we can see that there's the tricuspid valve there that has three scopes. Yes, that structure, that is the tricuspid valve. We can see it's separating that opening between the right atrium and the right ventricle. That is what it does, and it allows blood to flow in one direction. The next structure we are going to be looking at is the interventricular septum. So that is the interventricular septum. The interventricular septum is like a wall that divides the heart into two. Normally, in the fetus, this wall is incomplete until after birth. And since the placenta oxygenates the fetal blood instead of the lungs, the fetal blood can mix freely. But few weeks after birth, the remaining gap in the septum is closed to separate oxygenated and deoxygenated blood, since the lungs now take over the oxygenation of the blood. But if the gap does not close after a few weeks, that is, the interventricular
septum, the valve in the interventricular septum does not close. That is, the gap in the interventricular septum does not close after a few weeks. There's a condition that will result, and that condition is the condition of hole in the heart. So that's all about it, about the interventricular septum. So now we're talking about the aorta. The aorta carries oxygenated blood from the heart, and from there the blood will go into the systemic circulation. So that is all about the aorta. Now we can also see labeled there is the pulmonary veins, both the left and right pulmonary veins. What the pulmonary veins does is that it brings oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. That is what the pulmonary vein does. So now there's also the left atrium, which is labeled there. The left atrium also has the same function as we have said earlier of the right atrium. Also, we can also see some cups in this left part of the heart. That cups there is the bicuspid valve. So that valve consists of two flaps, that is two cups, and it has the same function just as the tricuspid valve. That is, it allows blood to flow in one direction, that is from the left atrium to the left ventricle, and closes when the ventricle contracts in order to prevent blood from flowing backwards. So that is all about the structure of the heart. Now we'll be talking about the blood vessels. The blood flows into the heart and away from it by means of some special tubes or pipes called the blood vessels. There are three major types of blood vessels, and although the three major types of blood vessels in the body, which are the arteries, capillaries, and veins, function effectively in the transport of blood, other divisions, however, exist and are very vital for transport also. The blood vessels start with the artery that leaves the left ventricle of the heart, and that artery is the main artery. It is known as the aorta, while the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava are the two major veins that return blood to the right atrium of the heart, with the superior vena cava draining blood from the upper part of the body, which are the head and the forelimbs, while the inferior vena cava draining blood from the hind limbs and trunk, which are the lower parts of the body. The exact flow of blood from the heart to the cells and back to the heart goes in a particular pattern, and I will show you now. So this is the pattern. From the heart, the blood enters into the arteries, and from the arteries it flows to arterioles, which are tiny blood vessels, and from there it goes to capillaries. From the capillaries, blood enters into cells. From cells, it then flows through venules. From venules, it enters vein, and from vein it returns back to the heart. Although arteries contain oxygenated blood and vein contain deoxygenated blood, the pulmonary artery contains deoxygenated blood, while pulmonary vein contains oxygenated blood. We should please take note of this exception involving the pulmonary artery and the pulmonary vein. It should also be noted that the hepatic portal vein is the only major vessel or vein that starts with and ends with capillaries. So I'll be showing you the structures of the arteries, the vein, and capillaries. So these are the different structures of the arteries, vein, and capillaries, and we could note some differences between them. And this includes the fact that, first of all, the artery have very elastic fibers and smooth muscles that are thick, while the vein also have elastic fiber and smooth muscle, but these elastic fibers are not as thick as that of the artery, while capillaries, their wall are usually one cell thick. And we can also take note of the very small lumen that capillary have as compared with the lumen of the vein and the artery. So we'll be looking briefly at the differences between the arteries, the veins, and capillaries. We do this in a tabular format.
So this is a table we're going to be using to talk about the differences between arteries, the veins, and capillaries. So the first difference is that for the arteries, they have elastic thin muscular walls. Okay, the first difference is for the arteries, they have elastic thick muscular walls. While for the veins, the walls are thin and less elastic. And for the capillaries, they have walls that are one cell layer thick. The next difference is that for arteries, blood flows at high pressure, while for veins, blood flow at low pressure. While for the capillaries, the blood flow is under the pressure from that of arteries. The next difference is that for the arteries, they carry oxygenated blood away from the heart, while for the vein, they return the oxygenated blood to the heart. And for capillaries, they carry both the oxygenated blood and oxygenated blood. The next difference we are going to be looking at is the thickness or layer of the muscle. For arteries, their walls have thick layer of muscle, while veins, their walls have thin layer of muscle. While for capillaries, their walls are one cell layer thick. The next difference we are going to be looking at is that of the valves. Usually, the arteries lack valves except the aorta and the pulmonary artery. While for the veins, valves are usually present. For the capillaries, they also lack valves. That is, no valves are present. So we'll talk about the next difference now. Pulmonary artery carries the oxygenated blood away from the heart to the lungs. While pulmonary veins, that is for the veins, pulmonary veins bring oxygenated blood from the lungs into the left auricle of the heart. While for the capillaries, they carry the oxygenated blood from pulmonary artery and oxygenated blood from the pulmonary vein. The next difference we look at is that of the blood volume. Arteries have low blood volume, while veins have increased blood volume as compared to that of arteries, and capillaries have high blood volume. Now we look at the flow of blood. For arteries, blood flows in pulses. For veins, blood flows smoothly. And for capillaries, no pulse in blood flow. And the last difference is that arteries blood is bright, that is bright red, while that of vein is dark red, and that of capillaries could be bright or dark red, but it will depend on the oxygen content of the blood. So now we have come to the end of the differences between arteries, veins, and capillaries, and this brings us to the end of this session. And now we are going to be looking at some examples and exercises. So now we are going to be taking our questions. The first example says the bicuspid valve is located between the A. Left auricle and left ventricle, B. Aorta and left ventricle, C. Superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava, D. Right auricle and superior vena cava, E. Right auricle and the right ventricle. The answer to this is A, and this is because the bicuspid valve is located in the left side of the heart between the left auricle and the left ventricle. So the next question, it says the pulmonary artery carries A. The oxygenated blood from right ventricles to the lungs, B. Oxygenated blood from right ventricle to the lungs, C. Oxygenated blood from the left ventricle to the right auricle, D. The oxygenated blood from the left ventricle to the right auricle, E. Oxygenated blood from the lungs to the right auricle. The answer to this is A, and this is because the pulmonary artery carries the oxygenated blood from the right ventricle to the lungs. And note, this only the pulmonary artery, that is the only artery that carries the oxygenated blood. It says blood moves through the arteries under high pressure because of the A. Absence of valves, B. Wide lumen, C. Thin layer of elastic tissue, D. Thick layer of muscle and elastic tissue. The answer to this is D, and this is because Blood moves through the arteries under high pressure because of their thick layer of muscle and the elastic tissue. Next question says tissue fluid is formed by the blood plasma. A. After passing through the blood capillaries. B. When present in the veins. C. When it enters into the lymphatic vessels. D. When it enters into the arteries. The answer to this is A. And this is because the fact that tissue fluid is the fluid between cells and it is outside of the blood vessels. And this fluid is formed when some of the blood plasma escape through the blood capillaries. So our next question, it says, which of the following blood vessels carries oxygenated blood into the heart? A. Pulmonary vein. B. Serum. C. Protoplasm. D. Plasma. E. Lymph. The answer to this is A, and this is because the pulmonary vein carries oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. And it's important for us to note that the pulmonary vein is the only vein that carries oxygenated blood. And to our next question, it says fetal blood from the kidney is carried back to the circulatory system through the A. Hepatic portal vein, B. Renal artery, C. Renal vein, D. Pulmonary vein. The answer to this is C, and this is because it is the renal vein that carries fetal blood from the kidney back to the circulatory system. The next question says a difference between the auricle and the ventricle of the mammalian heart is that the A. Ventricles carry the oxygenated blood. B. Ventricles do not have outlets. C. Auricles have no valves. D. Walls of the ventricle are less muscular than that of the auricles. E. Walls of the ventricles are more muscular. So our next question, it says a difference between the auricle and the ventricle of the mammalian heart is that the A. Ventricles carry the oxygenated blood. B. Ventricles do not have outlets. C. Auricles have no valves. D. Walls of the ventricles are less muscular than that of the auricles. E. Walls of the ventricles are more muscular than that of the auricles. The answer to this is E, and this is because the muscular walls of the ventricles are thicker than the muscular walls of the auricles. So this brings us to the end of the examples. Now we are going to be taking our exercise. So these are the exercises we have here. These exercises are located in our book Hidden Facts in Biology in pages 145. You can try your hands on them, and the answers to these questions are located in the answer section of the book, both in our soft copies and the hard copies. Thank you for listening.